The evening air was crisp as Sophia Mitchell arrived at the Gilded Note, tucking a loose strand of dark hair behind her ear. She slipped through the employee entrance of the upscale restaurant, nodding to the kitchen staff already busy at work. The familiar sounds and smells washed over her: sizzling pans, the rich aroma of reduced wine sauces, and the sharp commands of Chef Henri calling out orders. "You're cutting it close tonight," remarked Lucia, the hostess, as Sophia hurried to the break room to change. "Bus broke down again," Sophia replied with a tired smile. "Had to wait for the next one." The truth was, she had been lost in thought at the bus stop, her mind wandering as she'd watched a street musician playing an old keyboard. Her fingers had twitched at her sides, unconsciously moving to the melody. Some habits died hard even after 3 years. Sophia quickly changed into her uniform, a crisp white shirt, black vest, and formal black pants that the Gilded Note required of its waitstaff. The restaurant prided itself on being the most exclusive dining spot in the city, where politicians clinked glasses with tech moguls, and entertainment executives discussed deals over $400 bottles of wine. As she pinned her name tag to her vest, she caught her reflection in the small mirror hanging in the break room. At 28, she looked older than she should, the light gone from her eyes. Dreams deferred did that to a person, she thought. "Mitchell, we've got the Henderson party in the Rose Room and a full house in the main dining area. I need you on your A game tonight," called Anthony, the floor manager, as she emerged from the break room. "Got it," she nodded, putting on her professional smile, the one that never quite reached her eyes but seemed to please the customers well enough. The Henderson party meant the tech billionaire Robert Henderson and his usual entourage of yes-men and industry peers. Sophia had served them before. They tipped well but treated the staff like furniture, barely acknowledging her presence except to order another round of drinks or complain about the temperature of their steaks. The main dining room was already filling up when Sophia began her rounds. She recognized several regulars: the real estate developer who always ordered the same Cabernet, the newspaper editor who complained about the bread, and the socialite couple who seemed to communicate only through their phones, even while sitting across from each other. "Good evening," she greeted a new table of 4 men in expensive suits. "Welcome to the Gilded Note. May I tell you about our specials this evening?" One of them waved his hand dismissively without looking up from his phone. "Just bring us a bottle of the Chateau Margaux 2010. Sophia nodded and moved away, mentally calculating the price of the wine: $200, more than her monthly rent. One bottle ordered without a second thought. 3 years ago, she would have been shocked by such casual displays of wealth. Now it was just background noise to her evenings. The Gilded Note wasn't just a restaurant. It was a stage where the city's elite performed their success for one another, and Sophia was merely a prop in their production. As she moved between tables with practiced efficiency, she overheard snippets of conversation: business deals, gossip about mutual friends, complaints about contractors and household staff. The world these people inhabited was so different from her own that it sometimes felt like she was an anthropologist, observing a foreign culture. "That table needs more water," Anthony reminded her as he passed, his eyes constantly scanning the room for any imperfection that might disrupt the carefully maintained atmosphere of luxury. Sophia filled a crystal pitcher and made her rounds again. As she leaned between 2 guests to refill their glasses, she noticed a small commotion near the entrance to the private event room. Anthony was speaking in hushed but urgent tones with the owner, Mr. Phillips, both men looking uncharacteristically worried. Later, as Sophia returned to the service station to input an order, Lucia sidled up beside her. "Did you hear?" she whispered. "Vincent, the pianist, just called in sick. Food poisoning or something. And tonight of all nights." Sophia's eyes drifted toward the baby grand piano that sat in the corner of the main dining room, currently unoccupied. Most evenings, Vincent played a tasteful selection of classical pieces and jazz standards, adding to the restaurant's sophisticated ambiance. "So what's happening?" Sophia asked, trying to sound only casually interested. "Mr. Phillips is freaking out," Lucia replied. "Tonight's the private dinner for those music industry big shots, the ones who've been on the reservation book for months. Apparently having proper music is a huge deal for this crowd." Sophia's heart skipped a beat. "Music industry? Who exactly?" "Some record label executives, producers, I think. Oh, and that famous critic, the really mean one who destroys careers with his reviews. Oh, and I heard Victor Kensington will be there too." The name sent a jolt through Sophia's body. Victor Kensington was a legendary producer who had worked with some of the greatest musicians of the past 3 decades. His ear for talent was unmatched and his standards were impossibly high. "They're trying to find a replacement," Lucia continued. But on such short notice, Sophia turned back to the computer screen, trying to focus on entering the dinner order, but her hands had begun to tremble slightly. The piano. Victor Kensington. It was like the universe was playing a cruel joke on her. 3 years ago, Sophia had been in her final year at Juilliard, one of their most promising piano students. Music had been her life since she was 5 years old, when her grandmother had first taught her to play on an old upright piano in their small apartment. Through scholarships and part-time jobs, she had managed to attend one of the most prestigious music schools in the world. Her professors had spoken of her rare talent, her ability to bring emotion to technical pieces, her unique interpretations of classical works. Then her grandmother had gotten sick, cancer, and the medical bills had piled up. With no other family to help, Sophia had taken a leave of absence to care for the woman who had raised her. Between hospital visits and working multiple jobs to keep them afloat, her practice time had dwindled to almost nothing. After her grandmother passed away, the debts remained, and returning to school became impossible. The piano in her tiny apartment had been the first thing she'd sold to pay the bills. Now she lived in a world without music, serving people who took for granted the kind of opportunities she had lost. She hadn't touched a piano in nearly 2 years. The last time had been at a former classmate's apartment, and she'd stopped halfway through the piece, her fingers no longer responding the way they once had. The muscle memory was fading like a dream upon waking. "Sophia, table 12 is waiting for their check." Anthony's voice cut through her thoughts. She nodded and hurried back to her duties, pushing away the pang of longing that had surfaced. This was her life now, practical, stable, mundane. Dreams were luxuries she could no longer afford. The evening progressed and Sophia noticed Mr. Phillips making several agitated phone calls from the corner of the dining room. The private event was scheduled to begin in less than an hour, and from the look on his face, the search for a replacement pianist wasn't going well. During a brief lull, Sophia found herself near the piano. Without thinking, she reached out and lightly touched the polished black surface, her fingers remembering the feel of keys that weren't there. "You play?" The voice startled her and she quickly pulled her hand back. It was Theo, one of the older waiters who had been at the Gilded Note for over a decade. "I used to," she admitted, keeping her voice low. "A lifetime ago." Theo looked at her with newfound interest. "How well?" Sophia shrugged, uncomfortable with the question. "Well enough. I was at Juilliard before life happened." Theo's eyebrows shot up. "Juilliard? Are you serious? And you're serving lobster bisque to people who can't tell Bach from Beethoven?" She gave him a warning look. "It's not something I talk about. It's in the past." Theo glanced over at Mr. Phillips, who was now pacing near the kitchen entrance, his phone pressed to his ear. "You know," Theo said slowly, "they're desperate for someone to play tonight. Those music people, they'll eat Mr. Phillips alive if there's no music at their fancy dinner." Sophia shook her head firmly. "No, that's not. I haven't played in years. I can't just what? Save the day? Make some actual use of your talent? Maybe get noticed by people who could change your life?" Theo challenged. "It's not that simple," she replied, her voice tight. "You don't understand." "I understand that you're hiding," Theo said gently. "I've been watching you for 3 years, girl. You're like a ghost moving through this place but never really being seen. Maybe it's time people saw you." Before Sophia could respond, Anthony approached, his face drawn with stress. "All hands on deck, people. The Henderson party is leaving and we need to reset the main dining room. The private event guests are arriving in 30 minutes and we still don't have a pianist." He ran a hand through his thinning hair. "Mr. Phillips is considering using a streaming service through the sound system, but he's worried it will look unprofessional." Theo gave Sophia a pointed look, but she shook her head slightly and moved away to clear the Henderson table. As she stacked the expensive china and crystal, her mind raced. The idea was absurd. She was out of practice, rusty at best, and to play in front of Victor Kensington, the man whose approval could make careers and whose criticism could break them. It was a recipe for humiliation, but as she worked, memories surfaced, the feeling of losing herself in a piece of music, the rush of expressing emotions through her fingers, the rare moments when technique and passion aligned perfectly and created something transcendent. When was the last time she had felt truly alive? Truly herself? Mr. Phillips was now standing in the center of the main dining room, looking defeated as he addressed the staff gathered around him. "The private event will proceed without live music," he announced. "It's not ideal, but we have no other options at this point. I need everyone to be exceptional tonight to make up for this shortcoming. These guests are important influencers in the music industry, and the Gilded Note's reputation is on the line." Sophia stood at the back of the group, her heart pounding in her chest. A voice inside her screamed to stay quiet, to remain invisible. It was safer that way. No expectations, no disappointment, no reminders of what she had lost. But another voice, one that had been silenced for too long, whispered of possibilities. Before she could stop herself, Sophia raised her hand slightly. "Mr. Phillips," she said, her voice smaller than she intended, "I can play." The private dining room of the Gilded Note fell silent as Mr. Phillips stared at Sophia in disbelief. "You play the piano?" he asked, his voice mixing doubt with desperate hope. Sophia felt the eyes of the entire staff on her. Lucia's mouth hung open slightly. Anthony's brow furrowed in confusion. "I used to," Sophia said, immediately regretting speaking up. "I studied at Juilliard before I had to leave." Theo nodded encouragingly from across the room, giving her a subtle thumbs up. "Juilliard?" Mr. Phillips repeated, his expression shifting. "Why didn't you ever mention this?" Sophia shrugged uncomfortably. It never seemed relevant to serving tables. A few staff members chuckled nervously, but Mr. Phillips wasn't laughing. He was studying her with new interest, like a man who had discovered an unexpected tool just when he needed it most. "How good are you, exactly?" he asked, his tone now businesslike. The question stung. Once professors had called her gifted. Once she had practiced 6 hours a day, her fingers dancing across keys with precision and passion. Once music had been as natural to her as breathing. "I was good," she said simply. "But it's been almost 2 years since I've played regularly." Mr. Phillips checked his watch. The guests would be arriving in 20 minutes. He looked back at Sophia, weighing his options. "Play something for me," he said. "Now." The staff parted as Mr. Phillips led Sophia to the baby grand in the main dining room. Her legs felt wooden as she walked, her heart hammering against her ribs. What was she doing? This was madness. She sat down at the bench, adjusting it slightly. The polished black and white keys gleamed under the restaurant's soft lighting. She placed her hands on her lap, suddenly aware of the calluses she had developed from carrying trays, so different from the pianist's hands she once had. "Well?" Mr. Phillips prompted, impatience creeping into his voice. Sophia took a deep breath and placed her hands on the keys. They felt cool and smooth, both foreign and familiar. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to center herself. Then, without overthinking, she began to play Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. The first few notes came hesitantly, her fingers stiff and uncertain. But as the melody progressed, something awakened within her. The muscle memory that had lain dormant for so long began to return. By the middle of the piece, she was no longer thinking about the placement of her fingers or the timing of the notes. She was simply feeling the music, letting it flow through her like a current. When she finished, she kept her eyes closed for a moment, almost afraid to break the spell. The silence that followed was profound. Finally, she looked up to find Mr. Phillips staring at her, his expression unreadable. The kitchen staff had poked their heads out to listen. Anthony stood with his arms crossed, eyebrows raised in surprise. "That was—" Mr. Phillips cleared his throat. "That will do. Can you play for 3 hours? Do you know enough pieces?" Sophia nodded. "I can improvise too, if needed." "Good. You'll be paid Vincent's usual rate." He turned to Anthony. "Get her something more suitable to wear. She can't perform in a server's uniform." Anthony nodded and hurried off while Mr. Phillips pulled Sophia aside. "These people tonight are important, not just to the restaurant, but to the music world. They're discerning, demanding, and used to the best. I'm taking a risk here. Don't make me regret it." The implied threat was clear. If she embarrassed him in front of these VIPs, her job would be in jeopardy. "I understand," she said quietly. 15 minutes later, Sophia sat in the break room, now dressed in a simple black dress that belonged to Lucia, slightly too tight across the shoulders but presentable enough. Her hair had been quickly pinned up by one of the other waitresses, and someone had even found a tube of lipstick for her to use. "I still can't believe you never told us," Lucia said, helping Sophia with a troublesome hairpin. A real Juilliard student serving drinks all this time. Sophia offered a small smile but didn't explain. How could she describe the pain of a dream deferred? How could she make them understand that sometimes survival meant burying the parts of yourself that hurt too much to acknowledge? "The guests are arriving," Anthony announced, poking his head into the break room. "Sophia, you need to be at the piano now. Remember, background music at first, nothing too dramatic. Mr. Phillips will introduce you before the main course." Sophia nodded and rose, smoothing down the borrowed dress. As she followed Anthony to the private dining room, she felt as though she were walking through a dream. The private room had been transformed for the evening. Soft lighting from crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over tables adorned with fresh flowers and fine china. The baby grand piano had been moved from the main dining area and now sat on a small raised platform in the corner of the room. As Sophia made her way to the instrument, she caught snippets of conversation from the arriving guests, men and women in expensive evening wear, their voices confident, their laughter practiced. These were people accustomed to power and privilege, the gatekeepers of an industry she had once desperately wanted to join. She recognized a few faces from music magazines and industry news, a famous recording executive whose label dominated the charts, a renowned classical music critic whose reviews could make or break careers, the CEO of a major symphony orchestra. And then she saw him, Victor Kensington, his silver hair and trademark red glasses unmistakable. He was shorter in person than she had imagined, but his presence seemed to fill the room. People gravitated toward him, seeking his attention, his approval. Sophia slipped quietly onto the piano bench, grateful that no one paid her any mind. To them, she was just another service provider, like the waiters circulating with champagne flutes or the chef preparing their meal. She began to play softly, a gentle Debussy piece that floated above the din of conversation. Her nerves made her fingers tremble at first, but as she settled into the music, a strange calm came over her. This was what she was born to do. Whatever happened tonight, at least she would have this moment. Her fingers on keys, music in the air. For the next hour, Sophia played unobtrusively, transitioning smoothly between classical pieces and more contemporary compositions. Most guests ignored her, too engrossed in their networking to notice the music. Occasionally, someone would pause in conversation, cocking their head slightly as if just registering a particularly beautiful passage, before returning to their discussion. As the appetizers were being cleared away, Mr. Phillips approached the piano. "How are you doing?" he asked quietly. "Fine," Sophia replied, continuing to play softly as they spoke. "Good. I'm going to introduce you before the main course. Play something impressive afterward. These people respect skill." He hesitated, then added, "This could be an opportunity for you." Sophia nodded, though she wasn't sure what kind of opportunity he meant. Surely he didn't think these industry bigwigs would discover her like some fairy tale. She had seen how the music world worked, the connections needed, the money required, the compromises demanded. As the waitstaff served the main course, a delicate sea bass with saffron sauce, Mr. Phillips clinked his glass to get everyone's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice taking on a polished, ingratiating tone that Sophia had heard him use with important guests. "The Gilded Note is honored to host such distinguished members of the music community this evening. We hope you're enjoying your meal," the guests murmured appreciatively, many already halfway through their second or third glass of wine. "Tonight we have a special treat for you," Mr. Phillips continued. "Our regular pianist was unfortunately taken ill, but as luck would have it, one of our own staff members has stepped in. Please enjoy the musical talents of Sophia Mitchell, who will perform for you during your meal." There was a smattering of polite applause. Most guests barely looked in her direction, already returning to their conversations or their food. Victor Kensington glanced over briefly, his expression neutral, before turning back to the woman seated beside him. Sophia took a deep breath. This was her moment, perhaps the only one she would ever have in front of people who mattered in the music world. She could play it safe, perform something technically impressive but familiar, or she could take a risk. Her hands hovered over the keys for a moment. Then, decision made, she began to play. Not Chopin or Liszt or any of the classical pieces she had perfected at Juilliard. Instead, she played her own composition, a piece she had written during her grandmother's illness, a piece that spoke of loss and longing, of dreams suspended and grief endured. It started softly, almost tentatively, like a question whispered in the dark. Then it built, gaining complexity and emotion, weaving in classical structures but breaking rules deliberately, finding beauty in unexpected progressions. She poured everything into the music. Her frustration at serving people who had what she wanted, her grief for her grandmother, her anger at a system that had forced her to choose between education and family. Her fingers flew over the keys, no longer hesitant but strong and sure. The piece reached its crescendo, a storm of notes that somehow held together, finding harmony in chaos, before settling into a resolution that wasn't quite happy, but suggested the possibility of peace. When the final note faded, Sophia kept her head bowed, suddenly aware of the complete silence in the room. No clattering of silverware, no murmur of conversation, nothing. She looked up slowly, afraid of what she might see. The entire room was staring at her. A woman near the center table had her fork suspended halfway to her mouth, seemingly forgotten. The famous critic had removed his glasses and was polishing them slowly, his eyes never leaving Sophia. Two young executives were whispering urgently to each other, gesturing in her direction, and Victor Kensington was watching her with an intensity that made her want to shrink back, to disappear. His expression was unreadable, his fingers steepled under his chin. Then from a table near the back someone began to applaud. The sound was joined by another pair of hands, then another, until the entire room was filled with applause, not the polite, obligatory kind from earlier, but enthusiastic, even impressed. Mr. Phillips appeared at her side, his face flushed with surprise and relief. "What was that piece?" he whispered urgently. "I've never heard it before." "You wouldn't have," Sophia replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I wrote it." His eyes widened and he turned to face the applauding crowd with a broad smile, as if he had personally discovered her talent. As the applause began to die down and guests returned to their meals, though with notably more glances in her direction, Sophia saw Victor Kensington beckoning to a waiter. He whispered something and the waiter nodded before heading straight toward the piano. "Excuse me, Miss Mitchell," the waiter said quietly. "Mr. Kensington would like to know if you'd join him for a moment at his table." Sophia felt the blood drain from her face. This wasn't part of the plan. Playing the piano again after so long had been terrifying enough. Speaking to Victor Kensington, the legendary producer whose opinion could make or break careers, was beyond intimidating. She glanced at Mr. Phillips, who had overheard the request. He nodded encouragingly, his eyes practically gleaming with the possibilities. Sophia stood on shaky legs, smoothed her borrowed dress once more, and followed the waiter across the room, feeling the weight of curious stares with every step. Whatever happened next would change everything. She was sure of it. Sophia's heart hammered against her ribs as she approached Victor Kensington's table. The legendary producer watched her with steady eyes that seemed to look right through her. Up close, the fine lines around his eyes and the slight droop to his cheeks were more noticeable, reminders of his decades in the industry. "Miss Mitchell, please sit," he said, gesturing to an empty chair that a waiter had quickly pulled up. Sophia sat, her hands folded tightly in her lap to hide their trembling. Around them, conversations had resumed, but she felt the sideways glances and sensed the curiosity rippling through the room. "That piece," Kensington said, cutting straight to the point. "You composed it?" Sophia nodded. "Yes, sir." "Title?" "Unfinished Conversations," she replied. "I wrote it while my grandmother was ill." Something flickered across Kensington's face. A softening, perhaps, or a flicker of recognition. "It's good," he said simply. "Unusually good. The structure is interesting. Classical foundations, but with contemporary emotional honesty. Not pretentious. Not derivative. Coming from Victor Kensington, known for his brutal honesty and exacting standards, these words were the equivalent of a standing ovation. "Thank you," Sophia said, her voice barely above a whisper. "How long have you been working here?" he asked, taking a sip of his wine. 3 years. "And before that, Juilliard?" Sophia looked up in surprise. She hadn't mentioned Juilliard to him. He smiled slightly. "Your technique." They have a particular way of teaching dynamics at that school. I can always tell. Yes, I was there for 3 years, she confirmed. Why did you leave? The directness of the question caught her off guard. In her world, the world of service jobs and overdue bills, people didn't ask such personal questions of strangers. But she supposed this was how it worked in his world, where talent and potential were commodities to be assessed. My grandmother got sick. Cancer. She raised me after my parents died. I was her only family, so I took time off to care for her. The medical bills. She shrugged, not wanting to dive into the full story of financial ruin and impossible choices. Kensington nodded, as if her answer had confirmed something for him. And now you serve drinks to people who couldn't tell a Chopin etude from a TV jingle. She smiled, despite herself. Something like that. Life's cruel ironies, he mused. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card, sliding it across the table to her. I'd like you to call my office tomorrow. My assistant will set up a proper meeting. Sophia stared at the card, unable to believe what was happening. The embossed silver text seemed to shimmer under the dining room lights. Mr. Kensington, I'm not making any promises, he cut in, his voice firm. But talent like yours deserves at least a conversation. The rest depends on what you do with the opportunity. Before she could respond, they were interrupted by a tall woman in a sleek black dress who had appeared at Kensington's side. Victor, darling, the Harrington Foundation Gala Committee simply must have your input on the performer selection, she said, placing a hand on his shoulder. Kensington nodded to Sophia. We'll continue this tomorrow, Miss Mitchell. Taking the dismissal for what it was, Sophia stood, pocketing the business card carefully. Thank you for your time, Mr. Kensington. As she walked back to the piano, her legs felt unsteady. The card in her pocket seemed to burn with possibility, but she forced herself to focus. The night wasn't over, and she still had a job to do. For the next hour, Sophia continued to play, mixing classical pieces with more of her own compositions. The atmosphere in the room had changed. People were listening now, some even pausing their conversations when she began a new piece. A few guests approached the piano between songs to compliment her playing or ask questions about her background. From across the room, she saw Mr. Phillips watching with an expression that mixed amazement with calculation. No doubt he was already thinking of ways to capitalize on having discovered a hidden talent in his own restaurant. As the dinner wound down and guests began to leave, several pressed business cards into her hand with murmured invitations to call. A music critic known for his scathing reviews actually bowed slightly to her, saying, "Truly refreshing, my dear. A voice that hasn't been manufactured or homogenized." When the last guest had departed, the staff gathered in the private dining room, buzzing with excitement. Servers who had barely spoken to Sophia in 3 years now crowded around her, asking questions about her music and her conversation with Kensington. "Did he offer you a contract?" Lucia asked eagerly. "No, nothing like that," Sophia replied. "Just a meeting." "A meeting with Victor Kensington is not just anything," Anthony pointed out. "People wait years for 5 minutes of his time." Mr. Phillips approached, his usual stern demeanor replaced by an almost paternal pride. "Sophia, my dear, you were extraordinary tonight. Simply extraordinary. I had no idea we had such talent right under our noses." "Thank you," she said, uncomfortable with the sudden attention. "I should help with cleanup. Nonsense. You're our star tonight. Go home and rest. You'll want to be fresh for your meeting tomorrow." As Sophia changed back into her uniform and gathered her things, Theo approached her in the break room. "So," he said with a knowing smile, "still think it wasn't worth speaking up?" She shook her head, still processing everything that had happened. "I can't believe it. Any of it." "Believe it," Theo said firmly. "You just changed your life tonight." "Maybe," she cautioned. "It's just a meeting. People in the music industry make empty promises all the time." "True," Theo acknowledged. "But you did something more important than get a big shot's attention." "What's that?" "You remembered who you are," he said simply. "I saw your face when you were playing that first piece, the one you wrote. That wasn't just a waitress filling in. That was an artist speaking her truth." His words struck a chord in her. He was right. Whatever came of tomorrow's meeting, tonight she had reclaimed a part of herself she'd thought was lost forever. "Go home," Theo urged, giving her shoulder a gentle squeeze. "Tomorrow's going to be a big day." Sophia left the restaurant in a daze, barely noticing the cool night air as she walked to the bus stop. Her mind was too full of the evening's events, the feeling of keys beneath her fingers again, the faces of the audience as they truly listened to her music, Kensington's penetrating gaze as he assessed her talent. The bus was nearly empty at this late hour. Sophia sat by the window watching the city lights blur past. The business card in her pocket felt like a ticket to another world, a world she had once desperately wanted to join. When she arrived at her small apartment, she was surprised to find her hand still trembling slightly with leftover adrenaline. Sleep seemed impossible. Instead, she made herself a cup of tea and sat at her small kitchen table, replaying the evening in her mind. What would come of tomorrow's meeting? Best not to get her hopes up. The music industry was fickle, and even Kensington's interest guaranteed nothing. Still, it was more than she'd had yesterday. Her phone buzzed with a text from Lucia. "OMG, Sophia, check Instagram." "You're trending." Frowning in confusion, Sophia opened the app she rarely used. She had to scroll only briefly before seeing what Lucia meant. Videos of her performance had been posted by several guests from the private dinner, with captions like "Waitress with hidden talent stuns at the Gilded Note," and "When your server turns out to be a musical genius." Hidden talent. Mind blown. One video, posted by the music critic who had complimented her, already had thousands of views and comments. People were tagging major music labels and sharing the clip with messages urging others to watch. As Sophia scrolled through the posts, a knot formed in her stomach. This wasn't what she had expected, this sudden viral attention. Part of her was thrilled at the recognition of her music, but another part recoiled at becoming a social media novelty. Waitress virtuoso, Cinderella with a piano, from serving plates to serving beats. The captions reduced her to a convenient narrative, the unexpected talent in an unlikely place. None mentioned the years of training, the sacrifices, the deliberate craft behind her music. To them, she was just a feel-good story to share and forget. Her phone began to ring, Lucia calling. Sophia let it go to voicemail, needing time to process this new development. Then it rang again, a number she didn't recognize. Then another. By morning, Sophia had received dozens of calls and messages. Her social media accounts, dormant for years, were flooded with friend requests and followers. Local news outlets were reaching out for interviews. A morning talk show wanted her to appear later that week. Exhausted from a sleepless night, she dragged herself to her tiny bathroom and stared at her reflection. She looked the same, dark circles under her eyes from too many late shifts, hair that needed a trim, the small scar above her eyebrow from a childhood fall. But according to the internet, she was now the waitress virtuoso, a viral sensation. Her phone rang again. This time it was a number she recognized, the Gilded Note. "Hello?" She answered tentatively. "Sophia." Mr. Phillips' voice boomed through the speaker. "Have you seen the news?" "You're everywhere!" 3 major news outlets have called the restaurant already. "We've had a 500% increase in reservation requests since this morning. People want to know if you'll be playing regularly now." She sank onto the edge of her bathtub. "Mr. Phillips, I'm not sure. I'm prepared to offer you a position as our resident pianist," he continued, not waiting for her response. "Triple what Vincent makes. You'll be the face of the Gilded Note's new entertainment series. We'll bill you as the discovery of the year." The offer was generous, far more money than she made as a server with likely better hours. A year ago, she would have jumped at the chance. But now, with Kensington's card in her pocket and her music reaching thousands online, it felt like settling. "Can I think about it?" she asked. There was a pause on the other end, as if Mr. Phillips hadn't expected hesitation. "Of course, but don't wait too long. This kind of publicity is time-sensitive." After hanging up, Sophia checked the time. Her meeting with Kensington's assistant was scheduled for 2 p.m. She had hours to kill and no chance of sleep now. On impulse, she opened her closet and pulled out the battered keyboard she had kept hidden under old blankets. The last remnant of her musical past, too precious to sell even in her darkest financial moments. She hadn't turned it on in over a year, afraid of the pain it would bring. She plugged it in, placed it on her table, and sat down. The plastic keys were a poor substitute for the baby grand she had played last night. But as she began to play, the same feeling washed over her, that sense of coming home, of speaking a language that expressed what words could not. As she played, ideas began to flow, new melodies, variations on themes she had composed years ago. For the first time in a very long time, Sophia felt the future opening before her, full of uncertain but exhilarating possibilities. Her phone continued to buzz with notifications, but she ignored it. Whatever happened next, whether Kensington's interest led to something real or faded like morning dew, she had rediscovered something essential, the music that lived inside her, patient and enduring, waiting for her return. The offices of Kensington Records occupied the top 3 floors of a sleek glass building in the heart of the city. Sophia stood in the lobby, feeling underdressed despite wearing her best outfit, a navy blue blazer over a simple white blouse and black pants she normally reserved for job interviews. "Miss Mitchell?" A young woman with a tablet approached her. "I'm Danielle, Mr. Kensington's assistant. Please follow me." As they rode the elevator to the 48th floor, Sophia tried to calm her racing heart. Less than 48 hours ago, she had been taking drink orders and dodging the wandering hands of intoxicated businessmen. Now she was heading to a meeting that could change the course of her life. "You've caused quite a stir," Danielle remarked as they stepped out of the elevator. "The videos of your performance have gone viral. Over 2 million views as of this morning." Sophia nodded, still uncomfortable with her sudden internet fame. Her phone had been buzzing nonstop with notifications, messages from old classmates who had suddenly remembered her existence, and emails from people claiming to be talent scouts and managers. "Mr. Kensington doesn't usually meet with new artists personally," Danielle continued as they walked down a corridor lined with platinum records and framed photographs of music legends. "Consider yourself fortunate," they passed through a set of glass doors, into a reception area where 3 phones were ringing. Simultaneously, and harried-looking assistants rushed back and forth with coffee cups and file folders. The music industry might be glamorous on the outside, but behind the scenes it looked as stressful as a busy kitchen on a Saturday night. "Wait here," Danielle instructed, gesturing to a sleek leather sofa. "Mr. Kensington is wrapping up another meeting. Can I get you anything? Water, coffee?" "Water would be great, thanks," Sophia replied, her mouth suddenly dry. Left alone, Sophia studied her surroundings. The walls were covered with album artwork and more photographs, Kensington with various celebrities and musicians, many of whom she recognized from magazine covers and music videos. In each photo, Kensington stood slightly apart, observing rather than participating, the kingmaker rather than the king. After 15 minutes, the door to Kensington's office opened and a young man with artfully tousled hair emerged, followed by a team of people in expensive suits. The young man, whom Sophia recognized as a pop star with several recent hits, looked shell-shocked, his face pale despite his designer clothes and carefully cultivated image. "Remember what I said," Kensington called after him. 3 months to deliver something authentic or we walk." The entourage hurried the young star toward the elevator, whispering urgently among themselves. Kensington watched them go, his expression impossible to read behind his trademark red glasses. Then he turned to Sophia. "Miss Mitchell, right on time. Come in." Kensington's office was unexpectedly sparse. No gold records on the walls or plush furniture. Instead, there was a simple desk, 2 comfortable chairs, and a baby grand piano in the corner. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city skyline. "Sit," he said, gesturing to one of the chairs as he took the other. "I've been watching the public reaction to your performance. Quite impressive." "It's been overwhelming," Sophia admitted. "I imagine so. Overnight fame usually is." He studied her face. "You don't seem particularly thrilled about it." She hesitated, unsure how candid to be. "I'm grateful for the attention to my music. But the Waitress virtuoso angle feels reductive, patronizing," Kensington suggested. "Exactly. Like I'm a circus act instead of a musician." He nodded approvingly. "Good. You understand the first challenge then? The industry loves a narrative. Poor girl makes good hidden talent discovered. It sells. But it can also trap you, define you before you've had a chance to define yourself." He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled beneath his chin. "Tell me, Miss Mitchell, what do you want?" The directness of the question caught her off guard. "I want to make music," she said simply. "Real music. Music that means something. And fame, fortune, sold-out arenas?" She shook her head. "Those were never the goal. I just want to create something authentic, something that connects with people." Hmm. Kensington reached for a folder on his desk. I had my team do some research on you after our meeting. You were on track for a promising career before you left Juilliard. Your professor spoke highly of your technical skills and creative approach. Sophia blinked in surprise. He'd checked her references in less than a day. I also heard your original compositions from the videos, he continued. You have something rare. Technical proficiency combined with emotional honesty. Most musicians have one or the other, rarely both. He placed the folder down and fixed her with an intense gaze. Here's my offer. A development deal with Kensington Records. 6 months to create an album of original material. Full creative control over the music. We provide the studio, the engineers, the marketing. A $50,000 advance against future royalties? Sophia's breath caught in her throat. It was beyond anything she had dared to hope for when she walked into the building. That's incredibly generous, she managed to say. It's business, Kensington corrected. I recognize talent worth investing in. But there are conditions. Of course there were. Nothing was ever simple in the music industry. You'll need to work with our image team. The Waitress virtuoso angle is already out there. We can't undo that, but we can shape the narrative going forward, make you more than just a viral sensation. He slid a thick contract across the desk. All the details are in here. Take it home. Have a lawyer look at it if you want. Call me with your decision by Friday. Sophia took the contract, feeling its weight in her hands. Thank you for this opportunity, Mr. Kensington. He nodded. Don't thank me yet. The music industry chews up talented people every day. Make sure this is what you really want before you sign anything. As Sophia left the building, contract tucked safely in her bag, her phone buzzed with a text from Mr. Phillips. Have you considered my offer? Need to know by tomorrow. Booking's coming in fast. She sighed and put the phone away without responding. One decision at a time. When she reached her apartment building, she was surprised to find a sleek black car parked outside. A woman in a crisp suit stepped out as Sophia approached. Miss Mitchell, I'm Beverly Howard, A&R Director at Meridian Records. Do you have a moment to talk? Sophia hesitated. I just came from a meeting with Kensington Records. Beverly smiled. I know. Word travels fast in this industry. May I come up? I think you'll want to hear what Meridian can offer you. Against her better judgment, Sophia agreed. As they entered her small apartment, she felt a flash of embarrassment at the modest furnishings and peeling paint. But Beverly didn't seem to notice, immediately launching into her pitch. Kensington is old school. Prestigious, certainly, but set in his ways. Meridian specializes in fresh talent, artists who don't fit the traditional mold. She handed Sophia a glossy folder. We're prepared to offer you a 2-album deal, $75,000 advance, and a dedicated PR team to build your brand. My brand? Sophia repeated. Your story is golden, Beverly continued enthusiastically. From serving the elite to joining them, it's a social media dream. We've already drafted a campaign that would include a documentary about your journey. Special performances at high-profile restaurants. Maybe even a collaboration with a major fashion brand. From uniform to couture. Sophia flipped through the folder, which contained mock-ups of album covers showing her in a Waitress uniform on one side and elegant evening wear on the other. The proposed title, Service Industry. This isn't really what I had in mind, Sophia said slowly. Beverly waved away her concern. Trust me, this angle is marketing gold. Our social media team has been tracking the metrics on your videos. People love the rags to riches narrative. We'd be crazy not to capitalize on it. After Beverly left, having extracted a promise that Sophia would think about it, the apartment felt strangely empty. Sophia placed the Meridian folder beside Kensington's contract on her kitchen table and stared at them both. 2 offers from major record labels. More money than she'd ever had in her life. Opportunities most musicians would kill for. So why did she feel so uneasy? Her phone rang again. Another unfamiliar number. This time it was a representative from a morning talk show, wanting to book her for an appearance next week. We're thinking you could play a piece and then maybe serve coffee to our hosts. Really lean into the Waitress angle. By evening, her small apartment was filled with gift baskets, promotional materials, and business cards. 2 more record labels had reached out with offers. A local news crew had camped outside her building until she agreed to a brief interview. Mr. Phillips had called 3 more times, each offer more generous than the last. Overwhelmed, Sophia stepped outside for some air. The night was cool, the city lights blinking on as dusk settled. She walked without direction, trying to clear her head. After a few blocks, she found herself outside a small jazz club she used to visit as a student. On impulse, she went inside. The place was half empty, the lighting dim, a trio playing softly on the small stage. She ordered a drink and sat in a corner booth, letting the music wash over her. "Hiding out?" a voice asked. She looked up to see Theo, her co-worker from the Gilded Note, sliding into the seat across from her. "How did you know I was here?" she asked in surprise. He shrugged. "I didn't. I come here on Wednesdays. Their pianist is incredible." He studied her face. "You look overwhelmed. That obvious, huh?" She sighed. "I've had 6 different offers today. Record deals, TV appearances, endorsements. Mr. Phillips wants me to be the centerpiece of a whole new entertainment strategy at the restaurant." "Sounds like everything you ever wanted," Theo observed. "That's just it," Sophia replied, tracing the rim of her glass with her finger. "It's not. I never wanted to be the waitress virtuoso. I just wanted to make music that matters. And these offers don't allow for that?" "Some might." Kensington promised creative control, but even he wants to shape the narrative. "Another label wants to build a whole marketing campaign around my waitress backstory." She shook her head in frustration. "It feels like they want to turn me into a novelty act, like those singing dogs on talent shows." "Welcome to the music industry," Theo said wryly, "where authenticity is a marketing strategy." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the trio on stage. The pianist was indeed talented, playing with subtle emotion and technical precision. No one was filming him on their phones or creating viral hashtags. He was simply making beautiful music for a small, appreciative audience. "What if I make the wrong choice?" Sophia finally asked. "What if I sign with the wrong label or agree to the wrong terms and end up trapped in a contract that forces me to make music I hate? Or worse, what if I become a one-hit wonder, the waitress who had her 15 minutes of fame and disappeared?" Theo considered this. "Those are real risks," he acknowledged. "But there's another risk too." "What's that?" "The risk of saying no to everything. Of being so afraid of the wrong choice that you make no choice at all." He gestured toward the pianist on stage. "That guy is brilliant, but he's playing in a half-empty club on a Wednesday night because somewhere along the line, he probably said no to opportunities that didn't feel perfectly aligned with his vision." Sophia watched the pianist, noting the gray in his hair, the slight stoop to his shoulders as he bent over the keys. Was that contentment on his face or resignation? "So what do I do?" she asked. "I can't tell you that," Theo replied. "But I think you already know. The real question isn't which offer to accept. It's what kind of artist you want to be, and what you're willing to compromise to get there." As they walked back toward her apartment, Sophia felt a clarity beginning to form within the chaos of the past 2 days. By the time she reached her door, she knew what her next step needed to be. She took out her phone and composed a single text to Victor Kensington. "Can we meet again tomorrow? I have some questions about the contract." His reply came almost immediately. 9 a.m. "My office. Bring your questions and be prepared to play." Sophia smiled to herself as she unlocked her door. Tomorrow would bring hard conversations and difficult decisions, but for the first time in years she was moving toward something, not just surviving. Whatever happened next, she would face it on her own terms, with her music as her compass. 6 months after that fateful night at the Gilded Note, Sophia stood backstage at the Grand Hall, the city's most prestigious concert venue. Through a gap in the heavy curtains, she could see the audience filing in, men in tuxedos, women in evening gowns, their jewelry catching the light as they found their seats. This wasn't just any concert. It was the annual Harmonic Foundation benefit, a charity event that brought together the biggest names in classical and contemporary music to raise money for music education in underprivileged schools. The tickets cost $1,000 each, and the event was always sold out months in advance. Sophia checked her reflection in a nearby mirror, hardly recognizing herself in the elegant black gown with its subtle shimmer. Her hair had been styled by a professional, her makeup applied with expert precision. She looked like she belonged in this world of wealth and privilege. But did she feel like she belonged? The past 6 months had been a whirlwind of recording sessions, meetings, photo shoots, and interviews. After her second meeting with Victor Kensington, She had signed with his label under revised terms that she had negotiated herself, with the help of an attorney recommended by Theo's cousin. The key points: complete creative control over her music, a gradual rollout of her debut album rather than a rushed release to capitalize on her viral fame, and most importantly, an agreement that her marketing would focus on her music rather than her Waitress to riches story. Kensington had agreed to her terms with surprising readiness. "Smart," he'd said when she presented her requests. "You understand your value. That's rare in new artists." Now her debut album was nearly complete, a collection of original compositions that blended classical techniques with contemporary emotional resonance. The critics who had heard early tracks were already using words like groundbreaking and authentic. Pre-orders had exceeded expectations, driven by the genuine interest in her music rather than just her backstory. But tonight wasn't about the album. Tonight was about making a statement. 5 minutes, Miss Mitchell. A stagehand appeared at her elbow, clipboard in hand. Sophia nodded, taking a deep breath to calm her nerves. Through the curtain gap, she could now see familiar faces in the audience. The same elite crowd who had witnessed her impromptu performance at the Gilded Note half a year ago. There was the famous critic who had complimented her playing. There was the recording executive who had offered her a contract the next day. And there, in the center of the third row, was Mr. Phillips, who had eventually accepted her decision to pursue a recording career with surprising grace, after she agreed to play a monthly special event at the Gilded Note, with proper compensation. These people had been in the audience when her life changed. Now they would witness the next chapter. "It's time," the stagehand said. Sophia stepped onto the stage, blinking in the brightness of the spotlights. The audience applauded politely as she was introduced as the exciting new talent discovered at a local restaurant, now signed to Kensington Records. She settled at the gleaming concert grand piano, adjusting the bench slightly. This piano was a far cry from the worn baby grand at the Gilded Note or her small electronic keyboard. The keys felt like silk beneath her fingers as she positioned her hands. In the front row, Victor Kensington gave her a slight nod. They had discussed her performance for tonight at length. He had suggested she play her most commercially accessible piece, the one they planned to release as her first single. It was beautiful, technically impressive, and audience-friendly. Sophia had agreed to his suggestion. But as she sat before the audience now, she made a different decision. She began to play, but not the piece Kensington expected. Instead, she launched into a new composition she had completed just days ago, a piece she called Service Industry. The music started softly, almost hesitantly, with a simple, repetitive pattern in the left hand, like the routine tasks of a service job day after day after day. The right hand introduced a yearning melody that strained against the repetition, reaching for something more but constantly pulled back to the same pattern. As the piece progressed, the melody became more insistent, the harmonies more complex. The left hand's pattern began to break down, to transform. Discordant notes represented moments of frustration and rebellion. Then came a passage of chaotic, almost angry playing, the sound of someone breaking free from constraints, from expectations, from the roles assigned to them by others. The final section of the piece resolved into something new, not a return to the original pattern, but a transformation of it. The repetitive elements were still there, but now they supported a soaring, triumphant melody that acknowledged its origins while transcending them. When the final notes faded, there was a moment of absolute silence in the hall. Then came the applause, hesitant at first, then building to thunderous approval. Sophia remained seated, her head bowed, until the clapping began to subside. Then she stood, not to take a bow, but to address the audience. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "That piece is called Service Industry, and it's about the work that remains invisible to many of you in this room." A murmur ran through the audience. This wasn't the usual grateful acceptance speech they were accustomed to hearing. 6 months ago, I stood in this same city, in a restaurant where many of you dine regularly, wearing a uniform and carrying trays of food and drinks. I was invisible to you then, part of the background that makes your comfort possible. She could see Victor Kensington in the front row, watching her intently. This wasn't what they had rehearsed. She pressed on. "When I played the piano that night, suddenly I became visible. Suddenly I had value in your eyes. But my talent didn't appear out of nowhere. It was always there through years of training, through financial hardship, through working double shifts to pay rent while still practicing whenever I could find a piano. The audience was completely silent now, all eyes fixed on her. My story has been packaged as a Cinderella tale, the waitress discovered by the elite. But that narrative erases the reality of countless talented people working in service jobs, their gifts unrecognized because they don't have the privilege of being discovered by the right person at the right moment. She gestured toward the piano. The piece I just played is for them. For every artist, musician, writer, and creator working behind counters and carrying trays while their talents remain unseen. It's also for those who were seen but couldn't afford to take the opportunities offered. Talent isn't rare. Opportunity is. Sophia could see some uncomfortable shifting in the audience. A few people exchanged glances or checked their watches, but others were leaning forward, listening intently. I'm grateful for the opportunity I've been given, she continued, softening her tone slightly. But I don't want to be your feel-good story, your exception that proves the rule. I want to use whatever platform I have to change the system that makes such discoveries necessary in the first place. She turned to Victor Kensington, who was watching her with an unreadable expression. That's why I'm announcing tonight that I'll be using half of my advance from Kensington Records to establish the New Voice Foundation, providing music education and performance opportunities to talented individuals facing financial barriers. This announcement drew spontaneous applause from parts of the audience. Kensington's expression shifted to one of surprise, then thoughtful consideration. Mr. Kensington didn't know about this, Sophia added with a small smile. I'm telling him at the same time I'm telling all of you, but I hope he and all of you will consider matching my contribution. She returned to the piano bench. I'll close with the piece I was scheduled to play tonight. It's called Recognition, and it's about being truly seen for who you are, not for the role assigned to you or the story told about you. This piece was different, lighter, more accessible, but no less honest. As she played, Sophia felt a sense of rightness, of alignment between her external success and her internal truth. She wasn't just playing the notes on the page. She was telling her story on her own terms. When she finished, the applause was immediate and enthusiastic. As she took her bow, she saw Victor Kensington stand, leading what became a standing ovation. Backstage after the performance, Kensington was waiting for her. That was a risk, he said without preamble. Yes, she acknowledged. You went off script. You challenged the very people who can make or break your career. You put me on the spot with that foundation announcement. Also, yes. He studied her for a long moment, then his serious expression gave way to a rare smile. It was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. You've just guaranteed that every music publication will be talking about you tomorrow. Not as the waitress pianist, but as an artist with something meaningful to say. Relief washed over her. You're not angry about the foundation? No, it's good PR, and more importantly, it's a good cause. He adjusted his signature red glasses. About changing the program without telling me? A little. Don't make a habit of it. I wanted it to be authentic, she explained. Not rehearsed? I understand. He extended his hand. I think we're going to work well together, Miss Mitchell. You have the talent I expected, but you also have something I didn't foresee. The courage to use your voice. Not just your fingers. As Sophia shook his hand, her phone buzzed with a text from Theo, watching the live stream. You were magnificent. You spoke for all of us. The message brought tears to her eyes. That was exactly what she had hoped to do, to use her unexpected platform not just for herself, but for everyone whose talents remained hidden behind uniforms and service jobs. Later that night, as the elite of the music world mingled at the after-party, Sophia found herself approached by a young woman in catering uniform who was clearing empty champagne glasses. I just wanted to say thank you, the woman said quietly, for what you said up there. I'm a sculptor. At least I was in college before I had to drop out. Hearing you speak about people like us, it meant a lot. Sophia smiled at her. What's your name? Renee. Well, Renee, the New Voice Foundation is going to need artists on its advisory board. People who understand the barriers firsthand. Here's my card. Call me next week. As Renee walked away, clutching the card with wide eyes, Sophia felt a sense